He is a critical part of the Fox Sports family. George Wrighster joins me on the podcast. I'm Bryan Fenley. George, a former Oregon tight end,
Yes, sir.
fourth round draft pick, 6 seasons with the Jags, and he continues to dominate now post-playing career now in the sports media game. You can catch him every Sunday, 2 to 5 p.m. Pacific with Dan Beyer on Fox Sports Radio. George will also be filling in a lot this coming week on a host of different shows from Doug Gottlieb, Petros and Money, and more. So a lot of George coming up on the airwaves. And again, I'm Bryan Fenley, an anchor for Fox Sports Radio. George, you also have the Unafraid show, and I encourage everybody to check out your content, unafraidshow.com. Let's start right there. What was the genesis of you launching that platform?
Okay, so it kind of started with my radio career and life, really. Was, when I first got my first radio gig, it was 2014. I was on the Beast 980. It was a new startup here in LA. And I remember it, like, I was trying to be radio guy, you know what I mean? And it's hard because on one hand, like, you're worried about your job, you want to do a good job. Like, there's so many factors to it, right? And I didn't find my own voice. Like I was worried about so many other things that I wasn't being George Wrighster. So that's kind of where Unafraid came in. I was like, listen, I'm not going to be afraid to say things, to give my honest opinion on this or that because of the job, because of who's listening or any of that, so I try to approach things from a place of honesty, truth, facts, and then love, right? So if I am, because if you really think about it, love is not just always saying something nice to people.
That's a great point.
Sometimes it's actually saying something that's difficult to talk about. That's not fun to talk about. So, but if you approach it from a place of love, like I don't have any malice or ill will towards anybody, then it gives me the freedom to say things. And yes, some people may not like them, but you can't say, oh, he's a racist, he's a misogynist, he's this or that, because I'm approaching it from a place of like good-hearted and good nature, even though it may be difficult to understand, or well, difficult to take or difficult to hear at some times.
But I think over time, as they hear your message, they'll realize, if they're cerebral enough, that look, George brings up some good points. I love some of the points you brought up on The Odd Couple earlier this week, as far as the NBA bubble and what's going on there and how they're trying to keep things going. You can follow George on Twitter. I want to make sure I get this in, at George Wrighster. I'm on Twitter at Bryan Fenley. And again, George, like you said, it's not from a mean-spirited place. When you're pointing out stuff, it's from a loving perspective. And I noticed that you can be critical, but it's not from a negative side. And that's what I noticed. You have, what I really am drawn to your style, George, is there is an upbeat ability to what you do and an upbeat side of how you try to go about what you're trying to convey. And to think about where you are now, and you've been open about this. Growing up, you were bullied and made fun of for stuttering. And then to think about the brilliant post-NFL career where you're doing national radio and television. How did you get over those early struggles?
Wow. Well, they were early struggles, late struggles, all of that. So it was funny because it kind of all goes back to 6th grade. I was in, I think, Miss Sugita's class.
Look at you. Remember the name. I love it.
Yeah, because it was a kind of seminal moment in life, because I was a chubby kid. I was a fat kid when I was when I was younger, until I got to 9th grade, then kind of grew into my body, filled out, started working out a lot. And I remember she said, what do you want to be when you grow up? I was like, I want to be a professional athlete. Then I want to be a businessman, and I want to be in entertainment. Didn't know whether I wanted to act or be in, sports, whatever. I just knew that this was the call that was on my heart. And she said, George, do you know what the chances of being a professional athlete are? I said, yeah, they're like 1 in a million or less. And she said, okay, so do you think you need to pick something else? I was like, nope. And then fast forward, I was able to do that, was able to do business.
Mm-hmm.
But the entertainment part and all of that, I wasn't able to do because I still stuttered really badly. Like I went to speech therapy classes, all of that, still no kind of relief. And when it came to my teams, I didn't get picked for a lot of media appearances and commercials and endorsements, all of that stuff, mainly because I did stutter. And there was, and it was funny because I knew that after I finished, I had an opportunity to call some games for local high schools around here. Was able to put a little bit of a reel together, and the NFL had the broadcast boot camp. So yeah. And so I applied one year, got rejected. Next year, got rejected. The next year, so the third time I applied, I didn't expect to get in.
Okay.
Actually, I didn't expect to get in. I just sent it in just because I had the previous 3 years, but my expectations were super low. Turns out I got in. I was like, whoa. Oh, wait, actually, no, I got rejected first. And then a spot opened up and they asked me if I wanted to come. So I go there, and there was this guy there named Arthur Joseph, who is a voice coach. He helps write a lot of the former NFL players, their Hall of Fame speeches, works with Roger Goodell. He's worked with everybody from like Pavarotti to a lot of the big time people that you see on television in music and in broadcasting. So I met him, and turns out he lives in the San Fernando Valley. So I started going to go see him, and he taught me a lot of techniques about how to control my voice and the anxiety that you get from being a kid, right? From part of stuttering, there's a lot of things to it, but one of the biggest things is that you get so frustrated, and there's this anxiety that builds up in your body from the expectation of stuttering and then the frustration from it. So you kind of have to free yourself from that, and which is hard. And I remember when I was first on the Beast, one of the things that I struggled with was things were going well, and also as long as I keep my stress down in my real life, and, stuff going on in my personal life, then that actually affects it. And so I remember for probably about the first year or so, I was having kind of anxiety, well, in terms of not like crippling anxiety or anything, but just thoughts of like, wow, like what if I'm that kid that what baseball movie is that where he falls on his arm and then he can throw 100 miles an hour?
Oh, is it The Rookie? Is that
yeah. And then he falls on his arm again and he can't pitch. So that's what I was thinking. I was like, this is going so well. I'm doing radio, I'm doing TV. What happens if I'm up there? And I was doing live TV too. So I was like, what happens if I'm up here one day and I'd like have the stuttering version of falling on my arm. And so I had to get rid of that as well. It was like, okay, listen, I'm gonna ride this out as long as it goes. And hopefully that, because I had prayed about it. Like this was something that was just so deep to me that when I remember praying about it, I was like, God, because I always feel like that the things I've been able to do have been because I listened to what God put on my heart. I was like, why would you put this on my heart if this is something that I can't do?
Yeah.
But then at this point in time, so now I'm in the process of writing a book called Stutterbox, which is what kids call me. So kind of that's what I feel like that my actual reason for being able to do all of this stuff is to be able to help people and encourage people no matter what their struggle or whatever it is that they can push past it and really achieve their dreams, regardless of having something that other people see to them as a negative or that they can't do something because it's not as easy for them as it is for everybody else.
Are you going to, in that book, like how far along are you? And are you taking a lot of like anecdotes growing up where you remember like a certain instance where you felt really embarrassed or like a learning point or a turning point? Like take us through how you are scripting this book and how you're laying it out.
Well, so that's it. It's actually like a like a multi-dimensional thing. So the first thing is that there will be a book that comes out first for older people, for like teens, adults, all that, about some of those moments in my life where I could have quit, where this was just such a big deal for me.
Mhm.
And then there was going to be like, the way I envision it is like a children's series that
Oh,
teaches
wow.
love, empathy, and kids who can overcome things like this through like a character, almost like you see with like Captain Underpants
Yeah. Well, that's
or
cool.
Big Nate or something like that, some sort of book series like that, where kids can be encouraged, but at the same time, like learn some lessons and have a good time and be entertained as well.
On the NBA side, CJ Watson does this child book series. It's really cool. I feel like you're going to tap in on the NFL side where there's such a market for this, and I can't wait to see how this goes for you. George Wrighster is with us. Follow him on Twitter at George Wrighster. I'm Bryan Fenley. A lot going on in the world right now, George, as far as the social justice movements and all the NBA and the protests that are going on. And it brings about a time where a lot of people reflect on injustices that they faced in their own lives as they go back
Yeah.
and they think about how can we make things better. When you look at your life, George, and everything that you've overcome, a man who has had to overcome a whole lot. When you think about a time, maybe an uncomfortable time in your life where you had to be unafraid, when there might have been racial tension, how did you deal with that? How did you overcome that?
For me, like when dealing with race or talking about race or anything like that, or the things that have come up in terms of um with the police or anything like that, I look at it from a different lens. I try to, at least. So my first interaction with the police was when I was 16. I was riding in the car with my best friend TK. We were in Pasadena. Police pull us over, pull us out of the car just to check and see if we're okay.
Mhm.
And it was like, yo, like these people are speeding past us. Why are you bothering us?
Yeah, yeah,
They
yeah.
searched the car illegally, all of this, and then they let us go. And fast forward, being in the NFL, lived in a nice neighborhood here in California. I didn't really have too many problems in Jacksonville because I literally didn't do anything. I went from school, went from work to home and
Yeah.
went out to go eat, and that's kind of it. But when I would be out here in California, like I got stopped so many times because you're young, you're black, you're driving a nice car, nice neighborhood. They want to know why you're there. Are you selling drugs? Are you like all sorts of stuff? And it's just things that people just normally like that you shouldn't have to deal with.
Yeah.
So as far as race goes, like, and interactions with the police and all of that, I look at them twofold. It's also it's a socioeconomic issue, but it's also a race issue, because poor white people, they get treated poorly by the police in their neighborhoods as well. But then so do but then if you're poor and then you're black or brown on top of it, now you actually have to deal with another set of circumstances.
Mhm.
So when you hear especially like white people who didn't come from money talk about race, well, talk about interactions with the police and life and all of that, they're like, they don't always recognize, because they had their own struggle. Like that doesn't mean that their life was easy.
Yeah.
So it's like so they see the struggle that they had, and they're like, "Yo, I struggled too. Like, what's the difference?"
Mhm.
But then you don't realize that on top of that, that there are some other systematic things,
Sure.
like redlining, loans aren't given out on an equal basis. There's school choice. Like there's so many other
Yeah.
things. The way history is taught, and it's kind of whitewashed, and like just the fact that we had to go through so long acting like Columbus discovered America. And you're like, he didn't. And even if he had, how can you discover something where people already are?
That's true. Yeah, it's a good point.
So yeah, so I just look at the things that I've been through in my life and try to be empathetic to other people, and but still trying to explain how these things impact other people. Because if you're a black person, right? Well, actually, I'll go. If you're an Italian American,
Okay.
right? A lot of times you will know a lot of your history. You know whether your family came from Northern Italy, Southern Italy, the types of foods that you guys ate, your traditions, all of that. Same thing with a lot of Asian Americans, Arab Americans, wherever people are from. Typically, they understand and know their history. For Black people here in America, that's rare. You know, and I remember maybe like 2 or 3 years ago, my youngest son, well, now my second youngest son,
Okay.
he had a project at school. They asked him to talk about, it was like multicultural day or something, write about, you know, like your family's traditions, what your heritage is, the things that you eat, your culture, all of this. And I was like, I thought about it, it kind of hurt me because I don't know anything past like my great grandparents, and some of them, like not even all of them. I mean, because think about it, like your name was robbed from you. You don't know where you were from. If you were from Africa, if you were from Europe, if you were really from the Caribbean, like you don't really know where your family was actually from. And I was like, what are our traditions? I was like, what, like Nathan's hot dog eating contest, barbecue, and you know, and sports. Like that's it. That's all you know. Like you don't have a special dress. You don't have a special, you know, cultural things that even Jewish Americans have or anything like that. You don't have that. Like this is all that you have. So imagine if this country is all that you have, right? Mm-hmm. In terms of your heritage and your history, and you don't even know it. Yeah. And then you think about going into a store and somebody following you, and or somebody saying, "Oh, you don't belong in this neighborhood," or something. So it feels like, it's like simultaneously you can love America, right? Because this is your home. This is all you know. Yeah. But then hate how you're treated. Yes. At times. And then people will tell you, "Oh, you don't love this country and you should leave." Then it's like, no, this is my home. This is just as much my home as it is anybody else's. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's super powerful. And, you know, you think about being deprived of generations of trying to figure out where your family heritage is and how frustrating that must be. And that's a great spot on assessment on your part. How about in the NFL? When you were in the NFL, what was a life-changing conversation you had in the locker room?
I actually didn't have too many in the NFL, like a life-changing one, but I did have one in college.
Okay.
I had one in college. I went to school at the University of Oregon, and there was a guy there that I played with. And I won't bring up his name because me and this guy are still friends to this day. And I understand how the world works. People will try to cancel this dude, and I think he's a good dude.
Yeah.
And so he came from a big city, and he was white. And my third year there, we were sitting in the locker room. It felt like it was just me and him in the locker room. We weren't like especially close, but we had played together. We both were players on the team, you know, contributors. Like, so we had respect for each other. He was a hell of a player, all this. He sits down, and I can't figure out I don't remember how this conversation started. He started talking about his family and the way he grew up. He was like, "Yeah, I grew up around a bunch of skinheads, Aryan Nation people, all of this." And they told me that Black people were like this, brown, other shades of people, that they were like this, they were lazy, they were stupid, that they were bad people, all of this. He said, "I came to college and I learned that some of the most hardworking, good dudes I know are Black. So they taught me things that were completely wrong." And he was like, "I came to college and I've learned that there are two types of people. There are good people and there are bad people. I've seen white people, Black people do all of these sorts of things." And he was like, yo, like this has really been transformational for my life. And that's why I'm kind of against cancel culture, unless it's with people who are in a position of power who need to go, because
Sure.
they can, affect people's lives. But aside from that, education and love is the key, right? Like you want to change in behavior. And if people really can understand where the other people are coming from, then you will likely get somewhere and can change generations. So I asked him the ultimate question. I was like, okay, so can one of these black guys, can they marry your daughter? And he said, I'm gonna be honest with you. And I respect this answer because, and I think that this is an acceptable answer. He said to me, George, honestly, I would prefer she married a white guy, but if it's between marrying a white guy and marrying a good guy, I want the good guy. Because he said that it would cause a problem with his family, with his family who had him around these things. And he was like, I would rather not have to go through that. But if it's between her marrying a bad guy and a black guy or a Mexican guy or anything else, absolutely I choose that guy. And I just thought that was such a real answer. Because that's what you want. Like you want your daughter to marry a good guy, but we're also human beings trying to like not like cause drama in our lives too at the same time. So I didn't fault him for his answer. I actually thought that was a good answer. I was like, that's a reasonable answer. And just the fact that he got his life changed, and I actually talked to him not too like a couple weeks ago about this because I talked about it on the radio, but I don't ever use his name whenever I say it. And he was like, I appreciate you not bringing up my name. And he also has a job that would be very controversial for that to have been in his past.
Sure.
So yeah.
Wow. Yeah, like you said, before we rush to cancel, how about we educate? And if we can get that person to get to a common ground, then that's a win. You change minds that way instead of just throwing somebody out. If they're willing to make changes in their lives, then that is better for society moving forward. And George, you absolutely nailed it. So,
yeah, but that doesn't make you immune to consequences, though.
No, that's a good point too.
Of like Tom Brenneman, who was
good point. Good point.
Who was the Reds commentator who used a homophobic slur on air. Like, there should be a path to redemption for him because he's clearly a good broadcaster. But if Fox or whoever else doesn't want you on their air for a while, you need to get sent down to the minor leagues and get yourself together. Then that's like you aren't immune to consequences, but there should be a path to redemption for people who want it.
Well, and that's a good question, George. Like, so let's say you're Tom and you're trying to reconcile yourself. Like, at what point is it okay for you to get the green light to go back up there? When have you done enough to, pay your dues and suffer the consequences of what your actions were to now say, okay, I guess now you're allowed to go back up there? Like, where do we draw the line on that?
That's the magic question, right?
Yeah.
Because I've asked that same question, because as an imperfect human being, and I think that there is a difference between, and I know some people don't like to hear this, between somebody who is racist, a homophobe, or something like that, and somebody who is cavalier with their words, like somebody who feels that they haven't had to change their vernacular or the terms that they use to fit everyday life, and to really show that kind of, because at its core, it's really a respect issue, right? Because if you work with people, if you do things with people and you do your best to treat them equally and all this stuff, like, but you say these things, that means that you actually don't respect them at the same level that you respect other people.
Sure.
Because like for instance, my wife and women in general, sometimes they use the B word to like refer to themselves or to other people, right? But I have enough respect for my wife and for other women not to do that.
Yeah.
So it's a respect issue. So it's like, so do I have the respect for other people, even if there's not a problem, or if I don't feel that there's a malice in my heart? Like, I think that there's levels to it. That
Yes.
there's a lot of room between, David Duke and RuPaul. You know what I mean? I think there's a lot of room.
That's a spectrum. Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of room in between there. You know what I mean? So you can treat people with love and respect, which is the ultimate, like, way that we should be, interacting with people.
Yeah. You got a lot of love for doing this episode on the Food Network. People that know you know that you are on the Food Network. And so I want you to take me through what it was like being part of that, all of the lead up, the preparing, the shooting of this episode, and how this all came about for you.
Okay, without giving away any of their Cupcake Wars trade secrets, first thing is, like, if I could have any job in the whole world, right?
Okay.
I would still be able to do, like, talk about sports and all of this on a regular basis.
Yeah.
But then I would be able to be like, Guy Fieri on Drivers Drive
Dining. I don't even know the name. Yeah.
DDD. Drivers Dive In.
Yeah. Triple D.
Yeah. So I would be like getting a chance to travel around, talk about food, because I'm a foodie. I love cooking, all this stuff. Like, that would be the ultimate thing.
Yeah.
So, but on Cupcake Wars, it's a lot of work, dude. It's a lot of pre-prep work, all of this stuff. So so before you go, you do know what the theme of things is.
Okay.
Like you know what the theme is. But you literally have to go there and bake in a short period of time. Like, that actually happens. Like, there's no magic, on cooking shows where you put it in and then you automatically pull something else out of the oven.
Yeah.
No. So, and it's a high stress environment. I was doing it with my sister, who is, I'm a better cook than she is, but she's a better baker than I am.
Okay. All right.
And she was the manager of the store. So, like, but me being a football player, I was kind of highlighted more on the show. And she's a very strong personality too. And she was like, "Oh, I can't take him telling me what to do."
Oh my gosh.
So, but it was a ton of fun, man. Like, oh man, it was so much fun. I thought I was gonna have an opportunity to go on Chopped.
Okay.
I didn't get a chance to do it, dude. I am all in on this kind of stuff, dude. I do the Taste of the NFL with it's an event that raises money for food banks and all that in different cities where NFL teams are, and we have a big event during the Super Bowl every year, and I am like, it's one of my favorite things because there's food from all over the place. You're donating to charity. It is absolutely awesome. And like, food, it just makes me happy. And I even post on it on my timeline on Twitter. So if you guys look and you go #CoronaChef,
follow George on Instagram, Twitter, you name it. On Twitter @George Wrighster. Last question for you here, George, and thanks so much for your time. This has been really fun. You get a natural high, like you said, from cooking and being a foodie. The natural high you get on the radio at Fox Sports Radio. You pointed out a little bit of the behind the scenes of what you did for the Food Network in preparing for that show. For all of those who listen to you on a regular basis on the radio, whether you're filling in The Odd Couple, other shows on FSR, or the show you do on Sundays with Dan Beyer, what is it like to prepare for those shows? Give us a sense of like what you're doing so that when the red light is on and it's showtime, you're ready to go.
Yeah, because it's funny because you get a lot of athletes who get on and they're like, "Oh yeah, I can do what you do. Just turn it on and talk."
It's not that easy, as you know.
No, it's not that easy to be good at either, because you actually have to put time, preparation, and energy into it. So it makes it a little bit easier because I do my podcast, Wrighster or Wrong, wherever podcasts are found, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I cover a lot of the topics that we end up covering on the show, on the podcast. So there are hours that go into it, and what will happen is, especially on either, okay, so leading up to today's episode, which was on Friday, there were some thoughts that I had yesterday. Like, for instance, let me pull it up. So obviously the thing with the protests and the sports. So I have been mulling over this for a couple of days because I thought that like I told you, that the player should play because you mute your voice when you don't. Like that you are giving up the microphone and giving up an opportunity. So I use my handy dandy phone a lot when I'm on the road or whatever. I am tweeting and I'm taking notes in the note section on my phone, just of ideas, and then I formulate those later and I put them in an order that I try to make sense of.
Okay.
I try to find facts or statistics that back up what it is that I believe, because it's easy to get on and say things. Like, it's easy to be polarizing. It's easy to come up with some hot take, but it's not as easy to come up with something that's interesting on a almost daily basis.
Sure.
That's something new and insightful to people, because my goal is to actually like entertain but educate at the same time.
Yeah.
So probably for every, I would say, if the average show is probably about 3 hours on Fox Sports Radio, then probably 5-6 hours at least of kind of preparation has gone into it, as far as like thinking about these things, putting them down, making points. Because the worst thing that to me though is that when I finish a show, or if I finish this podcast, or I finish anything, and I feel like that I forgot to say something that was so important. So I take notes, like I don't write out full sentences, but I put down key points that I want to talk about, the way I don't forget, because I've already been over it in my mind a few times.
Sure.
And I've written it down. So then I can say, all right, here's step one, then I'm going to go here, then I'm going to go here. But then when the light comes on, sometimes the way you articulate it is different even than the way you wrote it down. And a lot of times it ends up better with the more practice that you do. And people aren't necessarily always willing to put in that practice, which means taping yourself.
Totally.
And just watching yourself. How did this go? How did my energy look? How was my expressions? Was my voice right here? All of this, and really trying to be an expert at your craft, but also in formulating opinions and delivering those at the same time.
Yeah, George, it's like you've got the point, but then those other hours that you're putting in, you're layering that point, and you're sort of expanding upon that point, branches of a tree. And so you're entertaining and you're pushing the narrative of the argument you're making so that it doesn't get stale. And that's why I really enjoy it from listening to you, and why you're getting all these opportunities. Proud of you, George. And thanks so much for doing this. Everybody go check out his website, unafraidshow.com. All of his content is up there for your perusal. George, thanks so much for doing this.
Bryan, thank you for having me, dude. You always do a great job on the updates and everything, and hope the opportunities and the podcast continue to grow for you as well, brother.